Hey, there we are.
All right, here we are. Welcome, everybody. Or not sure if we see other people in here yet, Chris.
I'm not sure.
I'm assuming I'll see everybody if they join. Oh, Andrew's on. All right, diversify where you pour with pop-up bars is what we're here to talk about today. First, we'll introduce ourselves a little bit. Chris, you can go right ahead.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Musil. I'm one of the co-founders of Coldbreak. We started as a manufacturer of home brewing equipment, but quickly got into the draft beverage industry once the breweries kind of took off. We started making jockey boxes for our local breweries, and they took off. So that kind of took over our business, and it is pretty much what we do today. We're part of a dozen or so state brewery guilds across the country, and so we are pretty much at every major beer festival throughout the country. So my job is very boring, but I've got a lot of festival experience that we can share. So yeah.
And my name is Justin Lynch. I've been with Arryved for about a year and a half. Arryved is a fully mobile point of sale, specifically designed for the craft beverage world. We like to work in taproom environments and manage the taproom environment as well. I cover the West Coast as a senior sales rep, and I've got about 15 years of industry experience. I spent my most recent 4 years in distribution, selling craft beer, and I managed the Dark Horse Bar and Grill in Boulder for about 12 years. So that is my history. But what we're here to talk about is what is a pop-up bar. First and foremost, a pop-up bar is a temporary bar located outside of your normal bar areas that essentially goes where the customers are to help optimize sales.
A lot of the areas that we're seeing people use pop-up bars are going to be patios, especially in areas that maybe it's easier for your servers to get to. So if you have some popular beers that you want to put on your patio, beer festivals, local grocery stores, trying to get your brand name out there for people that are shopping. Helping reduce wait times, whether you're at stadiums, they can have a pop-up bar in certain locations throughout the stadiums. We're seeing a lot of beer reps give, like Founders and Three Floyds, when they buy product from us, they're pretty much giving all of their beer reps a jockey box and saying, here, go present our beer out to the world. So we're seeing a lot of that. Building brand awareness is pretty much number one for a mobile bar, whether they're at a farmer's market or a grocery store, or whether it's your local community events, parades, whatnot. I mean, the list is endless, but pretty much anywhere you're going to pour beer that's not in your bar or tap room.
So what is needed? What is needed to create an efficient pop-up bar, both in and outside of the tap room? We're glad you asked. That's what we're here to talk about. So here's what we're going to need. Product first.
All right. So obviously making sure that your product is fresh, and then choosing what kind of beers you're going to bring. Mainstays versus seasonals. On a personal level, if it's a brewery that I've been to many times, I really don't want your mainstays because I've had your beers. But on the flip side of that is if you're introducing your beer to somebody, you want your mainstays because those are obviously your best sellers. So a good mix of both is generally what we tell people. What you're bringing equipment-wise is going to kind of depend on the amount of beer that you're pouring, right? So if it's an event you haven't been to before, we recommend reaching out to the local organizers or people that, if you've got colleagues that have been to this event before, ask. They'll bring eggs. They'll know more. They'll have a better idea of how many people are going to be there than you will. So if it's a smaller amount, cans sometimes can make sense. But on those larger festivals, you're going to need something that's you're going to have to be able to pour a lot of beer. So jockey boxes are preferential to cans in that situation. Temperature of your product is also a key consideration. Are you bringing warm cans? You're going to have to ice them. How much ice are you going to go through? When it comes to your draft options, when you're trying to choose the correct equipment, don't go cheap. One of the things that we did when we first started was, we just pulled off the shelf couplers and beer faucets, and of course, you just buy the chrome plated ones because they're cheaper than the stainless steel ones. But then after a while, you realize that, well, that chrome plating wears off, and then that metallic taste leaches into your beer. And so at one point at Coldbreak, we were like, all right, there's at no point will anything chrome plated come into this facility. So that's, when you're differentiating between equipment, make sure you're going stainless steel. Also, how it's built, right? So a lot of jockey boxes will have coils, but then they'll go from coil to tubing to your shanks. Well, you're not going to want any sort of ID change inside your jockey box. So that causes a lot of foaming issues sometimes. So how they're built is a pretty big part of how your jockey box is going to function out in the wild. Appearance, the picture you have in front of you is a front input. That was our breweries begged for something like that for a long time until we finally did it. They didn't want all that tubing because jockey boxes are typically built with the tubing coming in from the back, and they were just tired of having it look terrible. So they wanted their inputs on the front of the jockey boxes. So that's what we did there, and that just tightens up the appearance a little bit. Why is this important? Because we want a consistent brand experience. We want the beer that you're going to pour outside of your tap room to taste exactly like the beer that's being poured in your tap room. We want it fresh, and we want it cold.
Tech-wise, so this would be kind of my field. The speed and ease with the mobile system is really key for offsite. Providing that speed and ease with the mobile payment is really big, but also the staff facing. So whatever staff you have there, they're going to want something mobile, something wireless, something we're not going to have to plug in or find an outlet somewhere. So we want those mobile pieces, the wireless pieces. You're going to want those systems to be able to connect to Wi-Fi. And if not, maybe a hotspot, or even be able to operate on offline mode. And that's something that Arryved does all three very well. With that, you want to track what's selling. In order to track what's selling, you need the proper mobile devices to do so. That helps you to know, what to take for the next event. Maybe this wasn't selling well, and we don't want to bring this to the next event. It just wasn't moving. And you can see that sales history and see that data. Customizing menus. This is not customer facing. This is going to be for staff members. So being capable of really customizing that menu that you see on the point of sale itself is important. You might have 26 tap lines at your tap room, but you're only pouring 3 or 4 here. You don't want to have to ring all those things in separately and track all those sales by sifting through 26 different options when you've only got 3 or 4 on. So it's nice to have those custom menus. And then back to the mobile payment. One thing that we're commonly seeing now is folks wanting to pay on their phones. So there's QR code options. There's payments through their own devices, or just tap to pay and chip readers and that sort of stuff. And having those be wireless and having those access Wi-Fi and so on. Licensing is a big thing too. This differs across the country, right? State by state, county by county, town by town. So it's on you to really be aware of what type of licenses are needed to operate, off premise and away from your establishment itself. So be aware of it, look into it, and just make sure it's not something that you forget about or put on the back burner. Check with your brewery lawyer as well. A lot of the brewers will be working with lawyers, and it's important to make sure that you're not breaking the law by pouring off-site.
Branding. Okay, so on the next few slides, we use New Holland quite a bit when we're talking about branding, because they do a really good job. They're one of our local breweries in Michigan here, and they do a really good job of branding themselves. So if you're new to the festival scene with your brewery, there's kind of some bare minimums that you need. You're gonna want to tent. The beer festivals will typically put up these giant white tents. And what we're seeing now is the breweries themselves will put up their 10 by 10 tents in front of where their booth is at. And that kind of draws people into the rather than seeing a big plain white tent, it kind of draws them into their brewery. So you're going to want a tent, you're going to want a table cover, and you're going to want some sort of backdrop. The seeing your team in your brewery swag, you're going to want some sort of uniform. They don't have to be necessarily uniform, but you're going to want people in the same t-shirts or sweatshirts. Can you sell merch? Is a question you're going to want to ask the organizer. And let's see here. Signage. Please, for the love of God, have your beer, what you're putting on tap, have it before you walk into your area. The thing that bugs us is that when you're waiting in line trying to get a beer and you can't make that decision until you get up to the table. So we like it when breweries put what they have on tap prior to getting up to your booth. Also, having a nice presentation is going to it's going to draw people in. Okay, am I walking by your brewery, or am I going to come up and investigate further? So, Justin, on the next slide, there's some pretty good examples of from the customer point of view on the left. You've got a branded jockey box, you got your tablecloth, and you got your tent, right? The good part of a front, I'll go back to the one. So the good part, if you look at the picture on the right, they're all in New Holland gear, but also their mess is behind the table, and it's really not visible to the consumer on the left. So it really doesn't matter what it looks like behind you. It does matter what it looks like in front of you. So this is a really good example of the front and back view of it. And then obviously the don'ts. This is a good picture of the tubing coming out the back, and of somebody going cheap on their jockey box, and whether it's their tubing leaked or something, their beer leaked into their jockey box. So don't half-ass it. Don't bring more product than you need. Try to figure out about how much you're going to go through. Don't let customers see your mess. And other piece of advice would be don't get wasted. All right. Okay. The real question is, how do you make it easier on your team? Have general expectations for your staff. Have a drinking policy. At least doesn't have to be set in stone, but at least have a conversation with your team about, the amount of consumption. Have uniforms. Again, like I said earlier, it doesn't have to be the same uniform, but have them look like your brand. Are you going to send your A team or your B team? Staff training. Do they know how to operate the equipment? Are you sending, maybe if you've got an A team, send your new guys with the A team so they can learn from the guys that have done this before, your veterans. Pair up your seasoned employees. Here's a quick SOP and checklist that the Arryved and Coldbreak put together. Have it cover tent, tablecloth, signage, ice, parking access, talking to the local organizer about where your staff is going to park. How are they going to get fed? How are orders being taken? Are they given tokens or tickets, or is it just a free 3-ounce pour? And then anyways, there's you guys can read the list here.
Yeah.
But this is, Brittany put a QR link in there too, right?
Yeah, it's on the next one here. I just wanted to mention a few kind of from this page as well. Looking into really the logistics of the day. Is there a call sheet for the day? What time can you arrive? What time do you need to be set up by? What time do you need to break down by? How many staff members are you allowed to have? All that sort of stuff. So knowing that ahead of time and preparing for all those things. As he said before, as Chris said, your A team or B team, make sure that your staff is trained on the nuances of the pop-up bar itself and how it works and connectivity and all that sort of stuff. Contingency plans for inclement weather. That's huge too. Obviously there's, tents and all that sort of stuff with these outside events. At least here in Colorado, we find it could rain or snow any day of the year, to be honest with you. So be prepared for that as well and have a plan in place. And then as Chris mentioned, we do have this QR code here. If any of you would like to download this event checklist, you could use this yourself.
Yeah, one of the things that we do in Coldbreak is we'll do a quick dry run before we start packing everything. We'll even set up the 10x10 booth that we have, and we'll grab everything out. We'll make sure that everything's clean. Like, when was the last time your jockey box was cleaned? Was it cleaned beforehand? Did your team set up your future team, for a win? Did they, are all the faucets there? Is the drain plug there for the cooler? Does the cooler have mold growing in it? So we'll try to get everything together, and then we'll have backup plans. We'll have a backup coupler. We'll have a backup faucet. We'll have we'll have extra CO2 tanks. We'll try to run through every contingency that we have in our brain about like what may or may not happen, and we'll have like a small repair kit with extra beer washers in it, with extra wrenches in it. So running through what you're going to need prior to packing everything is kind of essential, and do that with your staff. Don't necessarily just do it and say, here's all the equipment that you need, go forth and do our festival. But having the team there that's actually going to be pouring the beer is having them run through what you have, just so you have more brains on it, I think is a good SOPs.
Sure.
Don't be, when we're walking by booths, we have a choice, right? So when you're drinking 3 ounces of beer at a time at a beer festival, you kind of get kind of choosy on where and what booth you're going to go in, right? So you always skip a few. But if there's one that looks interesting, I might stand in front of their booth for a few minutes while we finish, the samples from the last one. Right, and we'll start talking about it. So get creative with your beer. Like, have a theme for the event. Follow the trends. How many people are still coming up to your booth and saying, "Do you have a hazy?" Like, the hazies have been around for a while. It's starting to shift now. We're seeing a lot of like Mexican lagers, NA options, people collaborating with other beers. They're putting fun garnishes on their beers, whether they're using fun salt or putting a piece of candy with their stouts. Doing special tappings, that always sends a long line down your booth if you do some sort of special.
Maybe losing Chris for a moment here. Can you hear us, Chris?
And then Oh, there we go. I'm back.
There you go. You're back.
Are you throwing it out? Are you telling the world that you're going to be there? Are you using certain hashtags? You're using your brewery hashtag. Are you using some sort of social media contractor? Send somebody out that knows what they're doing. Tell people that you're there. Document versus create. You don't always have to necessarily create content while you're there, but just telling people that you're setting up for the booth and that you're pouring, and just have your staff document what you're doing and just throw it out there. Like that's what people like watching.
And then some, post-event stuff, the data that you're capturing and how you perform that day. The data obviously ensures a return. Understanding how that event performed is important. You want to track that return on investment. From the event, using tab tags or venues. Those are two things that Arryved likes to offer for these specific types of things, right? Venues before, as I mentioned, with customizing those menus, knowing what you're ringing in and what you're not able to ring in. Tab tags is also something that you can do with Arryved and menu items, so you know which ones are being sold where, and you can track that data and ensure that that return on investment was worth it. Okay. Sales reports can be separated on the back end with Arryved by using those venues. So the venue capability does allow you to show separate revenue centers. And that's really important to see, compared to your daily sales back at the tap room, how much sales did I do off site? Or maybe you just did an outside patio pop-up in your location itself. You want to see how that sales data performed. You can do so. Forecast and product offerings for the future events is really important as well. So knowing what sold and didn't sell by using sales history. And knowing what to bring. So maybe those standard beers that you bring every time, and then a couple of those seasonals or some of those experimentals that Chris was just mentioning as well. And then the efficiency in staffing. You want to make sure that you didn't overstaff. Maybe the event wasn't busy, or maybe it was busier than you expected it to be. So make sure you could see that data and record that data, so that the next time you do maybe even that same event or another similar event, that you're staffing properly, that you're bringing in the right amount of people and the right people themselves. And that's about all. Any questions?
That went faster than I thought it would.
Yeah. I expected 30 minutes. 20 is not bad.
Yeah.
So if there's no questions, we do have one more page, our contact information here. If you have anything that you want to, email us or reach out to us about, Any questions about Coldbreak or Arryved specifically, you can email us separately. And then if you wanted to download that event checklist, you could do so again here as well.
All right. I don't have any questions.
All right. Sounds good. Andrew, you were in that picture. That is Andrew on the far left there. The first day I met him at CBC a couple of years ago. So there's Andrew raising his hand. All right. Well, sounds good. Thank you all very much. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Justin.